financial needs of a business go beyond tax and attest services. That's why CTBK goes beyond accounting services and offers outsourced solutions through their affiliation with CFO Solutions Plus. These additional services allow clients to focus on their operational and long-term strategic goals. Trust CTBK's outsourced solutions to provide cost-effective, value-added financial services tailored to your company's needs. Call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400. Or go to ctbk.com to learn more about CTBK's outsourced solutions.
The Bills are taking the day off, but that doesn't mean Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK CPAs and Business Consultants, will take a day off. As you can see, we are no longer in the St. John Fisher University dorms. We are back in our home bunkers. I'm Tim Graham of The Athletic, here with Jonah Bronstein of the New Bronstein Times. And I will tell you, Jonah, there is at least one person who's going to be happy to see you out of the dorms and back home. And Mary Pat, if you're listening, and I think you are, because you are clearly a diehard TGAFer. I met Mary Pat at the Pep Boys. My car broke down earlier in the week, and she was waiting for an inspection to be done on hers while I was waiting for my ride to pick me up. And she sidled over and talked about what a great fan she is of the podcast, and made it a point to say she missed your tree last week, which means she got to the end of the podcast when we dropped that Easter egg in there to see if anybody listens until the end. And that was what we talked about at the very end of the podcast, was how you missed your tree. And so, Mary Pat, thank you for listening and being such a loyal subscriber to Tim Graham and Friends. But she is going to be thrilled that we are back in our comfy confines of home and not in the dorms. Jonah, do you get stopped in public a lot? People want to ask you about Tim Graham and Friends?
I wouldn't say a lot, but there has been a time or two when I've been recognized even by voice as, hey, you're from TGAF. And then I have some friends who listen to this podcast, and sometimes they'll follow up with questions, maybe things that I referenced, especially last week when we were talking about some old war stories from the dorms and wanting more detail that kind of doesn't come out in the podcast. But mostly, so I don't get recognized, but I do get reaction from regular listeners, and sometimes it's a little, it's fun, and it's also sometimes a little surprising what resonates with people and what they pick up on and what they want to ask follow-up questions and the Easter eggs that they pull themselves out of the basket.
Yeah, it made my week. I mean, to get to have somebody not only say that they enjoy the work, but also that they are such voracious consumers of it that they stay to the very end. They don't get bored with us at some point and find something else to look at on YouTube is humbling.
I do think that's the nature of podcasts, and maybe you get some of the same elements in talk radio, but more so than what we do in our other jobs with writing and print and television. You get that kind of intimate connection with your audience, and then if you happen to see them outside of the podcast, they can bring that back to you, and that's kind of the secret sauce, I think, that makes many podcasts popular.
Yeah, and you mentioned the voice thing too. I came walking in, and she said that what it was when I started talking to the guy when I'm dropping the car off, and I was telling him what my problem was, and she's like, "Oh, that's Tim Graham." She recognized my voice, so that was pretty cool.
Well, I was at a business. We won't mention who it is because they're not a sponsor of the show. We won't give them the free plug. But I was at a business about a year ago, actually working on a story that I was freelancing for a magazine. And someone popped their head out of a side office, recognizing my name and my voice, and they were like, "Are you Jonah from TGAF?" And that was maybe the first time I've ever had that kind of experience come up from a podcast like this. But there's people that I know also that weren't aware of me and my writing or anything that I've done journalistically before the radio show and the podcast, and kind of came into following me on Twitter or knowing what I do and following some of the other stuff I cover because of the exposure from this podcast. I've always been pretty grateful of that. And going back to our radio show, the same dynamic there.
Yeah. So my thanks to Mary Pat and to everyone else out there who listens and watches on YouTube. And this is the point where I should also ask that if you do follow along, to please subscribe, to rate it on your podcast platform of choice. We're on all the big ones: iTunes, Spotify, Amazon. I think Stitcher's about to go under, but we're on Stitcher too for as long as that exists. SoundCloud is an old timey one that we're still on. We're here and there. Please give us a rating, a like, whatever it is that you can do to help push us along. Yeah, and I might as well announce here that CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants, has renewed its title sponsorship of Tim Graham and Friends. So we're thankful to CTBK for sticking with us, and to everyone out there who's listening and watching. I mentioned earlier about the Bills being off today, so it's a good time to hit the pause button. I think they're 7 practices in. We last came to you on Thursday from St. John Fisher University, and a lot has happened since then. Of course, Damar Hamlin practiced in pads. Kim Pagula showed up to watch practice over the weekend. Josh Allen has taken some hits and thrown some picks. Where do you want to start, Jonah? Just on your observations. You've been out there every day at St. John Fisher. What stood out to you so far as they continue to ramp up towards that preseason opener against the Colts?
I think that's what stood out is that the Bills have looked good, which isn't really a hot take. It's kind of always the case when you're watching a team regularly in training camp, whether it's the offense or the defense, no matter who's maybe having the better of the day. I think you get more impressed by what you see than worried about what you don't see. Maybe it was different with some bad Bills teams, but you can find reasons to be excited about everything from Stephon Diggs, the way he's kind of blended back into the chemistry of this team and also making a highlight play almost every practice, and Dalton Kincaid looking kind of every bit what the Bills thought they were getting and what Bills fans are hoping they're getting in that first-round draft pick. And health throughout the team, aside from Von Miller and some of the guys that started and haven't joined the practice yet, but there haven't been any significant injuries. Tim Settle has a groin injury. Beyond that, that's really all that's happened, and a few dings and stuff that hasn't really lingered, but there hasn't been any bad health news. And baked into that is also Damar Hamlin, which has probably been the biggest story of training camp, that he's been out there as a full participant doing all the drills, all the reps, all the team reps that he would normally get as a second team safety, taking a little bit of contact. And that was a significant day in his story, and also for Bills fans and people covering the team. And one thing, this isn't new, but I've really been struck by covering camp, is how big of a star Damar Hamlin is. He's probably the second most popular player on the team now after Josh Allen. And from a media standpoint, maybe the biggest name. And just watching Damar Hamlin practice and all the kids with their signs and their jerseys and their heart hands emojis, he's become a very marketable figure and someone that's a little bit hard to take your eyes off of. When you see him on the field, you think, wow, that's Damar Hamlin. And a year ago, he was a pretty obscure backup player on the Bills. And through some unfortunate circumstances, the course of his life and his celebrity and his football stature has changed quite dramatically in the last year.
Yeah, you're right. A year ago, we were learning who Damar Hamlin and Jaquan Johnson were because Jordan Poyer was out and he had the elbow injury early in training camp. And we were wondering if Jordan Poyer is going to be out an extended period of time, who is going to fill that role. And it turned out to be flipped. By the time the regular season came around, it was Micah Hyde who was lost for the season with his neck injury. And that is when we really learned about Damar Hamlin, and he was a serviceable safety, clearly a big drop off, but most safeties would be from an all-pro, such as Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde, highly decorated safeties, the most decorated safety duo in Bills history. And so, yeah, there was a drop off clearly, but he held his own on a Super Bowl caliber defense and, earned his way. And then, of course, with what happened in Cincinnati in January, it's been an incredible story to see all these different mileposts that he's hitting with coming back, with being on the field, being cleared from doing half speed workouts to full workouts back in mandatory minicamp to full contact and being out there doing regular reps with everyone else. It's been really encouraging. I wrote a story a week or so ago that ran in which we took a look at whether or not Damar Hamlin could actually be cut. And that's something that would seem unfathomable, but the reason I brought it up is because it has kind of happened before, where the sentimental favorite, fresh off his emotional ESPYs appearance, walks off the stage with his Jimmy V Perseverance Award in his hand. And 2 months later, the Cincinnati Bengals cut him. And that's Devin Still, who became a national story through his daughter's leukemia fight. And she's been in remission now for 8 years, but that happened a while ago. And it's something to revisit. I thought it was worth checking into because I think that people should be prepared for the possibility. It shouldn't be shocking if he doesn't make the team because he is the second best backup safety at best on a team that keeps 4 safeties. So he's kind of on the bubble a little bit. He'll probably make the team, but it can be, it might be an issue. He's going to have to be ready to play. And we don't really know that yet. We probably won't until we see full contact. Yes, we've seen him in pads, but we haven't seen full contact yet. That's coming soon. And then we have the 3 preseason games against Indianapolis at home, and then the 2 road games at Pittsburgh, at Chicago before the regular season. He's going to have to show that he's ready mentally and physically, emotionally. That's the one thing that I took away from his padded practice from a couple of days ago is how emotional everybody was. His agent was in attendance. His parents were in attendance. He had family, friends there. It was a big deal for him to get past that hurdle of just being in pads. How is he going to emotionally handle all the other mileposts that are about to come in terms of a referee blowing the whistle and these are live plays? Here we go. There's a guy on the other side who needs to make his roster, whether it be, the Colts or in his hometown of Pittsburgh, where the second preseason game is. You got guys, they're going to be going full go. He's going to have to play special teams as a backup safety. Those are the highest collision plays out there. That is where the NFL has tried to legislate safety into those parts of the game: kick coverage, punt coverage, blocking on those plays. In fact, there's a story out today that the NFL is considering the XFL's model of starting with the kick cover team actually just lined up 10 yards away from the blockers on the kick return, just to so that way you don't have guys running full speed at each other, hurtling their bodies at one another. But that's what special teams in the NFL is still, as much as they've tried to add measures and take those plays out of the game and make them less relevant. They still are inherently dangerous. So anyways, there's a lot to see yet from Damar Hamlin. And clearly he is, like you say, the fans are rooting for him. The world's rooting for him. He's one of the great unifiers, a folk hero, I think, already in sports, minted, established for the rest of his life, whether he plays another down or not. I mean, this guy has his place in sports history, and it's apparent that it's been that he lifts up his teammates too. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next.
Yeah, you mentioned the emotions of it, and I think it was as emotional as it can be for Damar Hamlin. It's emotional for a lot of the people around him, his teammates, his family, his younger brother who was out there kind of practicing with him. And you could sort of see that I don't think anybody expected anything bad to happen at that first padded practice, but it was a relief for a lot of people involved to watch him practice and then watch him walk off the field and smile and sign autographs and have gotten through that milepost without any setbacks or anything whatsoever. So what you were talking about, cutting whether he makes the team or not, I really don't think there's a chance that he doesn't make the team. I think there certainly was in the spring and coming into this camp, but now at this point, I think he's pretty entrenched as the fourth safety, maybe even, has an opportunity to compete with Taylor Rapp to be the third safety or
Well, he's
get a little
competing
bit
with Dean
more.
Marlowe for that last safety spot. Dean Marlowe does play
Yeah.
a lot of special teams. His whole career has been based on special teams. He started the last 3 games of the season, the finale against the Patriots, and then the 2 playoff games. He goes back a long ways with Sean McDermott to Carolina. So Sean McDermott clearly likes Dean Marlowe. They traded for him last season because they
Right.
wanted to shore up the safety position. But I want to point out, Jonah, I mean, like you say, I do believe he does belong on the team if everything being equal, if healthy, all that stuff. But we heard comments from him in his news conference that he's not even really thinking about the Colts game. That Colts game's next week. I mean, there are still there are unknown unknowns about Damar Hamlin and how he is going to handle this next month. So I think that there are still a lot of variables in play here with where he is, with his mindset, and whether or not, because he's mentioned he's been scared, he's been anxious about this, and we're not going to know until we see him go through some other stages. It's not as though he's in pads and he's back, but it seemed as though those were the talking points after that practice. It's almost like back, he's probably not going to be fully back until we see much more.
But because it does seem like he's fully back. He's been out there for all the practice. He's on the field a lot. Not a starter, but Jordan Poyer had a veteran rest day yesterday, and the Bills have veteran safeties, him and Hyde, that sometimes miss some reps for their own, physical preservation and things like that. So Damar Hamlin has been out in the practice reps a lot more than Dean Marlowe or any of the other safeties you see on kind of that third team. They're using guys like Cam Lewis and Jamarcus Ingram a little bit in those spots that have over the past couple of years been practice squad guys that the Bills use at different positions and things like that. I think Damar Hamlin was always ahead of all of those players that were on the team last year, and it's still in that spot, getting special team reps as well. I mean, he's not taking a lot of contact, but it doesn't seem like they're holding back his rep count and his overall usage in any way. And I don't think the Bills can cut Damar Hamlin for PR reasons and the reasons with his contract and the vested veteran status. I think it has to be a situation where if he's not on the 53-man roster, then he's on injured reserve or something else where he's still, honoring his contract. And I think the way for the Bills to possibly do that, it would have required him starting on PUP and then having that option of starting the season on PUP and IR and the different things that can be done that way. And the fact that the Bills did not do that and really have indicated that he's kind of, at least as a practice player, back to normal workload in practice, signals I think he's back in that position that he had on the team last year. And unless there's a setback, I just don't really see it going in a different direction.
Yeah. And we're going to be joined here briefly. I should have mentioned this at the top. We're going to be joined briefly by Florina Altshiler, who has been a guest on Tim Graham and Friends in the past. She's going to talk about the latest in the Matt Araiza case. Matt Araiza is now suing his accuser, and there's been some developments there. I thought it would be a good opportunity to check back in with Florina. She's a former sex crimes prosecutor for the state of Alaska. She now practices here in Western New York and has been an analyst at WKBW Channel 7 and does a lot of great work. And she's always been great when she's appeared with us. So we're going to talk about the Matt Araiza case. But before we get to Florina, Jonah, I want to mention Josh Allen. And he has taken some hits. He's been limping a little bit. He's been not particularly careful with the ball. That's the one thing that the people were hoping that he was going to work on. I don't know that you can work on that really. I mean, is there some virtual reality type stuff that you can do to make better decisions in the off season to train your brain? I don't know, but he's thrown some interceptions and of course he's wearing the non-contact jersey. This isn't full go, and he's not facing a full throttle pass rush. But your thoughts, and again, you've been out there more than I have because I've been working on some other stories. What have you seen out of this Josh Allen, who famously a couple of months ago said he's never been more focused on football than he's ever been in his entire life? And then we see him on page 6 of the New York Post and the cover of Madden and at various golf events. And it seems like it's been a particularly ordinary offseason for Josh Allen in that regard. He's a superstar quarterback, and I don't know. Now I'm rambling. What have you been seeing out of Josh Allen?
I think the overall impression of Josh Allen is that he looks great. You know, the elbow is healthy, the arm looks great, he's running around, his haircut looks good. He looks to be in a positive mood all the time, whether it's with his teammates, and his overall, I think, kind of stature and celebrity in now this sporting market and the league itself. He seems to really be, every bit the Josh Allen that we've always seen, if not an even more enhanced and brighter star than he's been. As he, the Madden game comes out, he's going to be on the cover of that, and some of the different media appearances that he makes nationally. However, with that being, Josh Allen looking like Josh Allen, he's still running around, and he's still being the kind of aggressive, I don't want to call him careless, but maybe carefree type quarterback that we've seen early in his career. The first play where he got a little bit dinged up, got the wind knocked out of him earlier this week was a play where he was out there trying to catch a pass in a goal line situation. I mean, that's maybe not what you want to see from the quarterback that you're really trying to keep healthy and you're really trying to I don't know how much the Bills really need to try to change Josh Allen's game, but there's been some rhetoric about avoiding some of the costly turnovers and being more careful and being more mature and smarter, and maybe an older mid-career style of play from Josh Allen. And maybe we will see that at some points this season, but I don't know if we've really seen strong evidence of that so far in training camp. And I wouldn't be at all worried about him being hurt from the hits that he's taken so far, but it kind of makes you realize how perilous things can be for the Bills if he happened to get injured. And if he did get injured in training camp like Joe Burrow did, that would change a lot of the thoughts and feelings and narratives around the Bills. And it just seems like, maybe he should be a little bit more careful. Maybe the Bills should be a little bit more careful with him. And I think they're trying, but, the evidence so far has been that it's same old Josh Allen, for better or worse.
Yeah, I still think that he's the second best quarterback in the NFL. And I think that there is the difference between number 1 and number 5 in the NFL is razor thin when you're talking about Herbert and Burrow and Hurts. And, obviously Patrick Mahomes is number 1, but there's this group in there that's pretty close. But I think that if you were to make the, in the theoretical barroom argument, who would you trade Josh Allen for? I think that there are teams that would probably line up and say, yeah, we'll take Josh Allen over our quarterback. Everybody, maybe the Chiefs, if you had that opportunity. He's that good. He does everything so well. But when you're talking about falling short of the Super Bowl on a team with Super Bowl aspirations, and Stephon Diggs admitting that while maybe the Bills window isn't closing, his window is, as he said at his news conference on the first day of camp, that he has more good seasons behind him than ahead of him. And you want to make that jump from just missing out on the AFC Championship game to not only getting to the Super Bowl and winning it. The Lombardi Trophy now is hanging a large banner within the Bills field house to keep their eyes on the prize. And when you're talking about those aspirations, then you do need your quarterback to find ways to get better. And that being said, I know that he played a damn near flawless game in Arrowhead Stadium when 13 seconds occurred. He's done his part, but the Bills still need to find ways to get better. And if their quarterback can reduce his turnovers by 30%, then you're looking at much better chances on a game-to-game basis, particularly in January and February. So it is important. So I guess, we are nitpicking, but that's what happens when you're this close. And that's, to evoke DeMar Hamlin again, there are only 53 spots on this roster. And that's where I think that this is a team that needs the nitpick to find out, that you don't want to keep a guy just for PR purposes. We need to make sure that all 53 of our guys are the best 53 that we can find and the most focused 53. and the most dedicated 53, et cetera, et cetera. We still have a couple of minutes, I think,
Yeah,
before we get to
I got a
Florina.
little more of that with
Oh,
the
okay.
Josh Allen.
I was going to maybe talk about blue collar you, but what do you got?
Oh, no, I just wanted to, I thought of a good example of something that happened in practice that kind of might crystallize this a little bit. And I do believe that Josh Allen and probably the Bills offensive coaches and maybe the whole organization have, a concerted belief and want to, and kind of in their heads want to find a way to protect Josh Allen's health more, to protect the football more, to play a little bit of a more refined, more careful style of play in certain situations. I just wonder, this has always been the case with Josh Allen, and whether it's still the case, that those competitive urges and, the impulses, when the juices get flowing for him on the field, how much does some of that go out the window and he just starts playing like that golden retriever player? And, there was a play that happened in practice. Poona Ford gets an interception and ends up running it back for a touchdown. It's kind of a fun moment for the fans because, he's a big defensive tackle. Josh Allen chases him down and tries to poke out the fumble, and that made it even more fun and more entertaining. And I think a lot of the reasons he did that was for the crowd's sake, but it was also, again, kind of a young, your starting quarterback doesn't need to be, taking that extra sprint rep and trying to make that play and taking on a much bigger player in what I don't even think was a padded practice. And in game situations, you've seen quarterbacks get injured trying to make tackles after interceptions that were maybe a play based on emotion and not the intelligence of the game. And I do think Josh Allen's smart enough to figure some of these things out and maybe not do that very often, but you're still seeing that balance, I think, between his instinct, his nature, and his nurture, and kind of the Josh Allen that you get on Sundays when there's 80,000 people in the stands and he's really fired up, isn't always the one that's sitting in front of the microphone on Wednesday, kind of with a much more measured outlook on the game.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And he's that's it makes him who he is. And I don't know how much of that you can get out of somebody's game. And I liken it to the boxer who changes trainers later in his career because he needs to refine something, or there's a nuance, or he's trying to get that extra edge. And then sure enough goes through 6-8 months of training for a specific opponent. And as soon as that bell rings and the punches start flying, he's the same fighter he's always been, because it's hardwired in him to do certain things. It's in his DNA, literally. And, I don't know how much nuance Josh Allen is going to pick up between now and the end of his career, other than just experience and those types of, mental reps going through certain situations, both on the field and off. I don't know that there's any kind of specific training that can be done to get the Josh Allen-ness out of Josh Allen. I think that he is what he is, and Bills fans should be thankful for that, because he's one of the best. And as far as I'm concerned, the best quarterback in Bills history already. And I know that Jim Kelly, we can talk about the getting to 4 Super Bowls and that type of thing, but I think that if you were to do the thought experiment of plugging Josh Allen on the 1990s Buffalo Bills, you can go ahead and give him a couple of those Lombardi trophies.
And Jim Kelly's a player who stood in there and took the hits and threw interceptions and played a somewhat reckless style. And I don't really think, he did maybe change his game a little bit with age, but not really. I think he played that way till the end, till he got knocked out of his last game. And maybe for better or worse, Josh Allen will always play like the Josh Allen that got him the cover of the Madden football game, and everything that's made Josh Allen as popular as he is, I think is rolled into the way he plays in that style.
The hurdles, not sliding, not going out of bounds, taking the hit, maybe even liking to the delivery of a hit, lowering his shoulder, doing all, standing in the pocket 1 extra second, or scrambling around, trying to make something happen. That's the
but
beauty
I do think
Josh Allen.
If Josh Allen is trying to do more of that in games, training camp practices are where you start doing that. You maybe see him stepping out of bounds and, spiking the ball and avoiding any time. He does have
mentally
the
condition yourself to do those things. Yeah, you're right. Let's touch on blue collar you. We have not, Florina Altshiler has not checked into the Tim Graham and Friends green room yet. So your thoughts on Blue Collar U? We were on the show last week discussing how much better it would have been if they had a home game, and playing on the road as the defending champs certainly didn't do them any favors. If Blue Collar U is playing at Alumni Arena, do you think they survive that regional?
It probably does change the dynamic of that game a bit, both in the way maybe the Buffalo team would have played on its home floor, where they didn't lose a game as seniors with most of these guys in that group, and only lost one game the year before as juniors. However, and also the Syracuse team, maybe they don't play quite as well if they're in a road environment than a semi-home environment, although a lot of those players on that Bayham team aren't Syracuse guys, so that I don't know how that factors in. But they did have the crowd behind them, and that might have been a factor. But, you know, the Buffalo team came out and had a 15-point lead in the first quarter, and they really looked like they were the better team and going to win that game running away. Bayheim's team changes to a 2-3 zone, which I think you got to expect that from a Syracuse team, even if they only have half of the guys and don't have Jim Boeheim coach him. But he was sitting there in the arena.
Speaking of being in the DNA.
Right, exactly. And I think the Buffalo team was ready for that. I think they knew that was a defense that they might see and what they have to do to attack it. But they missed every shot. They missed at one point 20.
Could not make a
3-point shots in a row. And that's how you beat a zone.
I'm sorry, I talked over you. How many in a row was it?
It was 20 3-point shots in a row at one point, like, because they started off a little bit hot against, you know,
I was watching the game and I wasn't keeping track really. I knew they were missing a ton. I thought maybe I looked away from the TV and missed a make at some point, but 20 in a row.
Yeah, they were 4 for 29 at the end of the game, and I don't know what the first quarter was, but they made a few. So I think they were maybe 3 for 8 or 3 for 7 in the first quarter, and then got to that point with only making 4 by the end of the game. And you can't beat a zone without making outside shots. And because they have good shooters, they kept taking the outside shots. They kept running the offense to get these 3-point shots. That is the way that they would get themselves back in the game when they got down, and none of them went in. And they had a lot more shot attempts. They had more offensive rebounds. They forced more turnovers. They were probably playing harder and hustling and playing that blue collar style. But you can't win a basketball game without putting the ball in the basket, no matter how well you play in the other aspects of the game. And it really came down to not being able to make those shots, and maybe playing on a home floor where all these guys spent their college careers and shot. They practice in that gym a lot. I don't think a Buffalo team shoots that poorly on its home floor, but that's the way it goes in this tournament. And you do get an opportunity to play some home games in a regional if you do host, but the vast majority of the teams in this tournament are playing on neutral sites or road environments. Then you get to the the championship rounds, and that's on a neutral floor for pretty much every one of the teams. So this isn't a basketball event where home court advantage is really a big part of it.
Well, let me ask you this though, Jonah. You're connected with the local college basketball community better than anybody else. Had you heard any regret voiced from people that, we should have worked a little harder to get the games here, and maybe they'd still be alive? Because look, it is good publicity. No matter, for whatever reason, schools have had some friction with TBT. We even saw Syracuse's court wasn't even used in Syracuse, and there's all kinds of different reasons for that. And there seems to be some political reasons where anyways, not everybody's meshed on this, but it was great publicity for the University of Buffalo basketball program last year and this year heading into it, that had they stayed alive, it would have maybe had some value other than whatever they were going to get at the gate for those specific games.
I haven't heard anything that I would say that, UB regrets not trying to get the temporary air conditioning or doing more to bring the event to Alumni Arena. I do think there's some disappointment on all sides that it couldn't happen, and people at UB that wanted it to be on campus, and because of the air conditioning situation, it was unable to happen. I think there's maybe more disappointment and some regret from the other side, from Blue Collar U and the TBT, that they weren't able to make this happen. And then it does sort of seem like they've hit a bit of a dead end with trying to host this event at Alumni Arena. And then it doesn't seem like there's a workable solution for paying for and finding that air conditioning and making that gym suitable for the TBT next summer. But I think there's some motivation to try to find another venue or a combination of venues in Buffalo, downtown, maybe somewhat involving the arena or around the arena. There's other challenges, maybe more financial challenges involved in that, but that could be perhaps less expensive than it would have been to equip the air conditioning in Alumni Arena. And I really do hope it happens, but also it did miss a little bit of a moment in time of having this team all back together as the reigning champions, getting their rings or raising a banner or doing whatever type of acknowledgement that could have happened. And that can still happen next year, but a year removed and not being the reigning champions takes a little bit of the shine off of it. You don't know how many of these guys will all come back next year together. And if that happens, you know, if they have that kind of curtain call at ECC, or even, I think the downtown arena would be cool, but at another college's gym, it's not the same as doing it on the home floor where they played in their college games. And this celebration that the people associated with this team and the alumni want to have is about more than winning the TBT $1 million prize last summer. It's an overall celebration of all of the success these players had and winning 4 MAC championships and NCAA tournament games and being nationally ranked. This is the victory lap for all of that, plus what they've done in the TBT. And I still hope something like that happens, but it does seem like that moment in time, as I called it, the opportunity to really do it in the perfect way came to pass this past summer.
Yeah, I agree. It was a missed opportunity, but there was a decision that had to be made, and it was a lot of money involved. And it's not. I don't know that it was a fumble. It was a missed opportunity, but I can understand why it wasn't able to happen.
But
okay.
if anybody's listening to this podcast that is involved with booking events at KeyBank Center, whatever bank we're calling it right now with the downtown arena, or will be in the future, I do think that there is opportunities to do something with the TBT basketball tournament and also basketball events in general beyond the NCAA tournament coming here every 4 or 5 years. And if anybody's picking up that mantle and looking to do some of that and promote some basketball events in the city, either in that building or around that area, Riverworks Harbor Center, ECC, Flickinger Center, things like that, you know, call me. I have some ideas, and I know some people that have some other ideas. And I think that there's a desire from basketball fans in Western New York to see more basketball events in the winter and the summer in more arenas, and less being told, no, that would be cool, but no, we can't do it. No air conditioning, or no, that gym doesn't work. I'd like to see more opportunities to say yes and have some more events, and then see if the fan support shows up to justify putting those things on.
All right. Florina Altshiler is in the green room. So I'm going to send the producer back there to get her. And we're going to have her on to talk about the Matt Araiza case, the latest with that, the charges that were not filed. Lots obviously happened since we last had Florina Altshiler on the show, and she's going to give us her take on the latest developments, which is that Matt Araiza is suing the accuser, and how unusual that is. The approach, is it a legitimate case? I mean, what happens in the legal community here? I mean, Matt Araiza has also threatened to sue the attorney representing the accuser. So we're going to get into all that, how it works, whether or not Matt Araiza has a strong enough case, and whether it goes to, gets a resolution. Is it gamesmanship? Well, we're going to get into all that with Florina Altshiler here next on Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants.
CTBK is more than just a full-service accounting firm. They are one team with an innovative approach that takes on each new challenge with collaborative problem-solving skills to provide creative solutions for their clients. Based right here in Western New York, CTBK is a champion for your business in our community. Additionally, CTBK goes beyond tax and attest services by offering a wide array of consulting and outsourced solutions tailored to meet the unique needs of your business, allowing you to focus on your operational and long-term strategic goals. Whether you're a large corporation, a small business, or somewhere in between, the team at CTBK is determined to help you succeed. Visit ctbk.com or call 716-630-2400. 716-630-2400 to learn how CTBK's one-team approach can work for you.
We're joined now on Tim Graham and Friends by Florina Altshiler. She is a former sex crimes prosecutor for the state of Alaska and is now a defense attorney with Russo and Gould. She is coming to us from the Russo and Gould offices. Thanks for joining us, Florina. How you been?
Great. Thanks for having me, Tim.
Wanted to ask you about Matt Araiza. And there's been a lot going on with him since we last spoke about him. I don't know, maybe around a year ago at this time is when everything really happened. Right before the Bill season began, he was accused of participating in a gang rape while attending San Diego State University. The girl was 17 years old. And back in December, the district attorney who was overseeing that case declined to press charges against Matt Araiza. He has been on a bit of a media tour. He was on HBO Real Sports just recently, a pretty compelling interview there, in which he hinted that he was going to sue the accuser's attorney and the accuser. Well, half of that has come to pass. He is suing his accuser. How common is this, Florina, in terms of this type of case? I'll just rather than layer on extra details, I'll just leave it as open-ended as possible. What are your thoughts here on what's transpired here recently?
As we see in the media, this is becoming increasingly more and more common. Johnny Depp sued Amber Heard for defamation over claims that she made about him being a domestic abuser. We see Trump suing his accuser in a civil lawsuit for defamation over her accusation of him raping her. Now we see Matt Araiza, and this is just from the past year. Normally, defamation claims are not all that common. The reason they're not all that common is because it is difficult to meet the high burden of proving that the statement made was false. You have the burden of proving that the statement made was false, that whatever they said actually definitively did not happen. Not more likely did not happen, but did not happen. If you cannot prove that the statement was false, then your defamation claim for damages fails. So we don't typically see too many of these lawsuits. More recently, we've been seeing them. But here's the catch. My opinion is we're seeing a lot more of them because the people doing the suing are celebrities. These are people who have a lot to lose. And so the lawsuit is actually twofold. One, it's to recover money damages, but two, it's a media battle in terms of their reputation. And so they're using that lawsuit for defamation as a tool to regain or fix the reputation that was tarnished. And that becomes problematic, in my opinion.
Dan Gillian, the attorney for the accuser, was interviewed by the San Diego Union Tribune and was asked for his reaction to Araiza's lawsuit against the accuser. And I thought this was rich. His quote is, well, he says that he hasn't seen the lawsuit yet, quote, and we don't litigate in the media, end quote. Dan Gillian was all over the media in the early stages of this case. And so was Matt Araiza's attorney, and probably not smartly in some regard, his former attorney. I think he now has a new attorney handling this. But you raised that point of this being, at least to some degree, public relations. Do you think that this is, and again, I don't want to put how performative is this versus versus being realistic to bring some sort of justice or financial satisfaction to Matt Araiza?
I mean, look, Johnny Depp was successful with his defamation lawsuit against Amber Heard. Trump less so. So, you know, it's going to depend on the facts. It's going to depend on the attorneys. It's going to depend on the jury, or perhaps there will be a settlement before trial. But I think what it really does is it's used not just as a legal remedy, but it's used as a sword. It's also dangerously used to create a chilling effect from other victims coming forward. Now, in this case, this young woman who made these allegations, the district attorney's office has made a determination that there's not sufficient evidence to support her claims. And there's been evidence that was brought forward that really suggests that he wasn't even in the bedroom. which is concerning, right? And false claims can hurt people. We've seen cases where false claims hurt people. People lose their jobs. People have their reputations ruined. People are expelled from school. In this case, he had a very lucrative contract to be on the Buffalo Bills that is gone. And he's in the prime of his football years, and those have been taken from him. He's trying to get on another team. Nobody wants to take him because he's got these civil lawsuits pending. So his damages, his economic damages, are very, very real here. The question of did she make these claims knowingly false is a question to be answered. I think he does have a good faith basis to make these allegations and to bring forth this lawsuit. I think the problem, though, is there are accusers who make claims and allegations that are true, that are not false. And the DA's office makes a determination for one reason or another that they can't prove the claims to the high legal standard of beyond a reasonable doubt, which is what's needed in a criminal case. They don't go forward with the charges. And then there's a civil lawsuit for defamation. And that really is a sword to create a chilling effect, to not have victims come forward. And I am very concerned about that in those cases. I don't know that this is one of those cases.
Yeah, I think, how difficult is it for Matt Araiza in this case? You mentioned no, she has to be proved to have knowingly made false statements. While he may not have been in the room, and there are witness testimony to that effect, it's come out through the district attorney's interview of the accuser, which was recorded. There's been a transcript. I think the audio has been also played in by certain media outlets, that he was not in the room, but he did admit that he had sex with her on the side of the house before the alleged gang rape incident. I would think that if she were confused and alcohol was involved, all kinds of things, that would make it very difficult for him to prove that she was 100% certain he wasn't in the room at the time, because he was there. Yeah. He was on location, if not in the room. So anyway, it gets into a pretty murky territory.
For sure. And I think he's got a difficult hurdle to pass to be successful with the defamation lawsuit. But I think where he wins is that he gets his side of the story out there. And he gets to rebuild his reputation by saying not only was the criminal case non-existent, right? The DA's office decided not even to pursue charges, but I'm going to send a warning shot right back at her. And I'm going to accuse her, and I'm not mincing words here, I'm going to accuse her of being a liar. I'm not saying she's confused. I'm not saying that I'm not guilty criminally, but did something wrong. I am point blank saying that she made false statements and she is a liar. And that is a bold move, in my opinion. And it's a dangerous move because there are women out there who are victims of sexual assault, who hear about cases like this and other civil defamation lawsuits when they come forward as victims. And unfortunately, the message that they hear is don't bother making these claims. You can be sued civilly. And I think that's really unfortunate and frankly outright scary.
As far as the public relations aspects of this with Matt Araiza and his image, restoring his image and protecting it, I wanted to get your perspective as a legal scholar, but not on the legal aspects of it. And then Tim's kind of perspective as a media person. How much better off might have Matt Araiza been if he had been more open in making these claims in his defense and calling the accuser a liar and things like that early on, over a year ago? How much different would things have played out, do you think, since then, if he had been saying the things he's saying now right away?
You know, I think that's a difficult thing to do early on. I tell all of my clients not to say anything, because the last thing I want is for them to make statements that potentially can be contradicted later on when the evidence comes out. And so I don't know that it's a decision that he made. I suspect that he followed the advice of his attorneys, and I suspect that his attorneys told him not to make any statements. Because as attorneys, we are very cautious. You know, our clients maybe tell us, listen, I wasn't there, I didn't do it. We don't believe that because we don't know. And the last thing we want is for our client to say, I wasn't there. And 9 months later, 12 months later, we find out there's video of our client there. And now our client's a liar. Now, in this instance, he's not a liar. He's saying he wasn't in the bedroom. There's evidence to support he wasn't in the bedroom. But as his attorney early on, we don't know whether what he's saying is true. We know there's video out there. We haven't had the opportunity to review it. We know there's all sorts of social media stuff. There's a lot of people that are there. There's all these kids that are being interviewed who were at the party, and we have no idea what they're going to say. So the best move is to wait until we have all of the evidence so that we could respond informed and not saying something that's putting our foot in our mouth versus just making these statements right from the beginning and then having those statements be contradicted.
How possible is it that this lawsuit against the accuser is being filed just to get her to drop her lawsuit? So that way he can go about resuming his career and he can tell NFL teams, look, there's no lawsuit. You don't even need to worry about me being found guilty for a civil suit or having to find any fault at all, because I think that's something that's hanging out there, that teams would not want to bring him in and then have him lose the civil suit.
Absolutely. I don't think any team will want him while a lawsuit is pending, period. Even if she drops her lawsuit, if his lawsuit against her is pending, then that's litigation that's going to distract him while he's on a team, and a team would not be interested in him. So not only would she need to drop her lawsuit, but then he would need to drop his lawsuit. And certainly those terms are something to be negotiated. I don't know that he's filing his lawsuit just to convince her to drop hers. I think he's filing his lawsuit for two reasons. One, to regain his reputation in the media and to fight this case in the media. And two, to retaliate, to send a warning shot right back at her. Listen, this is nonsense. And now I'm going to try to hold you financially accountable. I think the issue, you know, oftentimes as a defense attorney, I see civil lawsuits where people exaggerate their damages, where people pretend to be more injured than they are. I think this is a case where his damages are very, very real. This is somebody who has economic loss that is indisputable. He was dropped from the Bills because of the lawsuit that she filed. He is not on another football team now because of the lawsuit that she filed. And we're not talking about a kid who was thrown out of Little League. We're talking about an NFL player with a very promising career who lost significant money. So the damages in his lawsuit, I think, are real, and I think they're supported. And so if he's able to get over that very tough hurdle of proving that her statements were knowingly false, intentionally false, then once he gets to damages, those are softballs. That's easy. He's got a lot of money to potentially recover here.
What are your thoughts, Florina, on the sentiment that because charges weren't filed, he's innocent? You know, that's kind of what a lot of people like to say, or they are inclined to believe that he's innocent, and the Bills not owe him an apology, and shame on the Bills for not backing their guy a year ago and releasing him and costing him employment.
I would disagree with that. Look, the Bills only knew what the Bills knew at the time when they knew it. And you can't Monday morning quarterback this one. So what the Bills knew is that a lawsuit was filed against him, making some very serious sex assault allegations. The Bills also knew that the DA's office in San Diego was looking into criminal charges. His contract with the Bills explicitly said that if he has litigation against him, not even criminal charges, just a lawsuit, that can be considered distracting and that they can drop him. So what the Bills did is they followed the contract terms and they did exactly what the contract prescribed, which is to drop him if he has a lawsuit pending. And him having a lawsuit pending is not something in dispute. That was a fact at the time, that remains a fact now, and that is the number one reason why he cannot be picked up by any other team right now. Even though the DA's office has determined that they are not pursuing criminal charges against him, no team wants him. And the reason no team wants him is because he still has a civil lawsuit pending against him. So the Bills team did nothing wrong here. They did exactly what any other reasonable team would have done at the time, given the contract that he had with them. In terms of whether or not he's innocent, that's a totally different question. When the DA's office makes a determination that they are not going to prosecute somebody, what that means is that they do not believe that they can prove the charges beyond a reasonable doubt. I have had many cases when I was a sex crimes prosecutor that I declined to prosecute. That means that I decided that I was not comfortable being able to prove those charges beyond a reasonable doubt. And I don't want to get it wrong. I don't want to accuse somebody of something that they did not do if I'm not sure. That does not mean that the person didn't do it. What it means is I don't have enough evidence to prove it. There's plenty of people who did it, but there's not enough evidence to prove that they did it. It cannot be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. That also means that a civil lawsuit for the same thing can be possible and can be successful, because the standard in a civil lawsuit is a lower standard. It's just by a preponderance of the evidence. More likely than not, the weight of a feather more. So it's a pretty low burden. People may not be prosecuted criminally, and then they might be found responsible civilly. Two very different standards. Neither court asks whether the person is truly innocent.
And this is why I should also mention, I should have mentioned it at the beginning. This is why Florina Altshiler is a legal analyst for WKBW Channel 7 in Buffalo, because she is eloquent and breaks it down for us morons in such a in simple way. I should also mention Florina is running for town council in Orchard Park. So this is a sports related podcast, Florina. Anything you want to say about the Bills Stadium site and what, as Orchard Park town council member, you would like to see happen in and around that stadium?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So I am running for Orchard Park Town Council on the Democrat line, and I absolutely support smart development around the stadium. I think we're one of very few places with an NFL team or any major sports team that has zero development around its stadium. And I think that's really an opportunity that the town is missing out on. I think that it's prime fertile land to develop, to put restaurants in, to put a hotel in. And I'm not advocating for putting these things into residential communities. What I'm advocating for is to build and develop around an area that is already commercially zoned, that's going to be seeing tens of thousands of people coming in for Bills games, people who are hungry, people who would love to go out to dinner, people who would love to grab a local beer, people who are coming in from out of town that need a place to stay, that would love to stay in a hotel right by the stadium versus going into the city of Buffalo. And so I believe that currently the town's resistance to that kind of smart development is actually causing it to lose out on significant economic opportunity. on significant tax dollars that can be brought in from these commercial establishments, an opportunity for the town to really be a destination place for people from across the country that are already coming in anyway for Bills games, but they're coming in and they're leaving. I would like them to come in and stay and explore and enjoy everything that Orchard Park has to offer.
Well, Florina, thanks for this. I know you have important lawyer things to do, but giving us part of your afternoon is very kind to educate us about what's going on with the Matt Araiza case, or just these types of cases in general, how they work, the thinking behind them, the ramifications, et cetera, et cetera. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, guys.
And thanks everyone out there for checking out Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants.